of civilian economies in the war than they'd had earlier. In this country, and this country alone, in that array of major belligerents, the civilian standard of living actually went up by 15%. We managed to build this incredibly huge war machine and to grow the civilian economy in the same way. No other country that fought the war had that experience, and I dare say few, if any, other countries in the history of warfare have managed to grow their civilian economy while fighting a years-long conflict that was essentially a war of attrition against their adversaries. So this is a unique accomplishment in the history of World War II, and possibly a unique accomplishment in the history of warfare. I'll give you one illustration of this, a story I'm very fond of telling that makes the point. In late 1944, the marketing people at Macy's department store were looking about for a way to organize a big store-wide or chain-wide sale. And they eventually decided to have this sale on, it strikes me as a very weird date, December 7th, 1944, the third anniversary of Pearl Harbor. And just this is about 2 weeks before the Battle of the Bulge in Europe, and around the time the Battle of Leyte Gulf, Battle of the Philippine Sea, the Marianas Turkey Shoot, and so on, invasion of the Philippines in the Pacific theater. In other words, it's the moment of greatest and bloodiest, most costly U.S. engagement, military engagement in both theaters, both European and Pacific. But they have the sale on the third anniversary of Pearl Harbor Day, December 7th, 1940. It would be like today, Walmart having a sale on 9/11 and advertising 9/11 as the day. Wouldn't that strike you as kind of creepy? But anyway, this was December 7th, 1940. So they advertised the sale, duly had the sale, and at the end of the day, it turned out that Macy's had racked up a higher dollar volume of sales than in any other day in its history up to now. Now, there is simply no other country that fought World War II where anything remotely resembling that could have happened. And it's just another reminder that America's war was not like anybody else's war. We didn't fight the same kind of war. Yes, we emerged on the victorious side, and yes, we were hugely advantaged by the position we found ourselves in at the end, the summit of the world, so-called. But we did not contribute in terms of blood and treasure and sacrifice anything remotely comparable to what other peoples who were swept up in this conflict were compelled to contribute. All right, final note. And this is a grisly note to end on. So maybe I should apologize for it, but here it is. These are the numbers of dead by major country involved in the war. These numbers, I should say, are slightly different from the ones that you saw on the screen yesterday. I'm just going to quickly through these, so I want to get to another one. There's the production. You're going to have access to all these slides. There's Macy's and stuff. But I want to put that up. I'll explain this. There's a lot of controversy this day, or not so much controversy, just uncertainty about the precise numbers of war dead, but we have pretty good estimates. And my estimates come from two pretty good sources. The Oxford Companion to World War II and the Library of Congress Companion to World War II. These are consensus numbers from those two accounts. Where they got the exact numbers they put on the screen yesterday, I can't tell you. They're slightly different from these. Okay, let's start with our first partner country in the Grand Alliance, the United Kingdom. 350,000 dead, of whom 100,000 were civilians. China, 10 million dead, of whom 6 million were civilians. Yugoslavia, relatively small country by our standards, 2 million dead, of whom 1.5 million were civilians. Japan, 3 million dead, of whom 1 million were civilians, and the great majority of that 1 million civilian dead killed not by the 2 atomic bombs, but by the firebombing raids that began in November of 1944 and actually continued beyond August 6, 1945. Poland, again, relatively small country by American standards, 8 million dead, of whom 6 million were civilians, and the great majority of those 6 million civilians Jews. Germany, 6.5 million dead, of whom 1 million were civilians, and most of the German civilians killed by the combined Anglo-American bombing attacks. Soviet Union, 24 million dead, of whom 16 million were civilians. The United States, the official Department of Defense today on their website posted military death number in World War II is 405,399 in all branches of service. Army, Army Air Corps, there was no separate Air Force in those days, Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, and Merchant Marine, which is eventually classified as a combat arm. 405,399. I don't mean to trivialize that number or to in any way denigrate what those people sacrificed. But when you put that number in the scales with all the other numbers I've just been giving you, you begin to get a picture of America's relationship in this conflict. And in a conflict in which, as we've heard before, the civilian death toll is greater globally than the strictly military death toll, not least of all because of what happened in the Soviet Union. The American civilian death toll in this war, of civilians killed in the continental United States as a result of enemy action. That's the 48 states that at that time had a star on the flag. The civilian death toll for World War II in the 48 continental states is exactly 6 people, not 6,000, not 600, but 6 single digit. They were all killed together in the most improbable location of a place called Gerhardt Mountain, which is a few miles away in the Oregon Cascades from this tiny little hamlet, not even a wide spot in the road. There's only buildings on 2 of the 4 corners of the intersection that constitutes Bly, Oregon. And they were killed in April of 1945. Very improbable place and a very improbable time. So the dead were a woman by the name of Elsie Mitchell and 5 children who were with her. Elsie Mitchell was the wife of a minister at a local church. His name was Archie Mitchell. Elsie was 25 years old. Archie, I think, was 26 or 7 at the time. It's a footnote to this, or a sidebar, Archie Mitchell not only saw his wife die on this occasion, but a few years later, in the early 1950s, he went off as a missionary to French Indochina, or Vietnam, and about a decade later, in the early 1960s, he was kidnapped in Vietnam, and his fate is unknown. Never been heard from since. So Archie Mitchell had a pretty rough life, I'd say. So what's the deal? So Elsie Mitchell and Archie Mitchell, her husband, were taking some children from their church on a Sunday school outing, and they drove up to Gerhardt Mountain, which was then Weyerhaeuser Timber Company forest. I think it probably still is, as a matter of fact. And the Reverend Mitchell dropped off Elsie and these 5 kids, aged 9 to 14. And he went to park the van or the vehicle, whatever it was. And as he was parking it, he heard an explosion, and he ran to the site of the explosion. And as he later testified, he saw his wife and these 5 children laid out like the spokes of a bicycle wheel, all dead. What had happened was they apparently had seen some strange-looking object in the brush, and they pulled it out to get a better look, and it blew up and killed them. And what they had found was a Japanese firebomb. Again, this is an episode that's not widely known, but it's important, at least symbolically, and it's very important in the lives of these people. But the Japanese manufactured, if that's the right word, a fleet of about 10,000 firebomb balloons. These balloons were made out of mulberry paper, and the panels of the paper were pasted together by school children on the floors of gymnasiums. They needed a big flat surface in this room, or bigger to lay it out on, with potato flour paste. Then the balloons were taken to a place called 99 League Beach near Tokyo, inflated with helium, and a little gondola was slung underneath them, and the gondola contained a 3-pound firebomb and about a 5 or 6 pound anti-personnel weapon. And these things were lofted into the jet stream, which Japanese meteorologists had figured out was up there over the Pacific. The Western meteorologists didn't even know about the jet stream yet. They found out pretty soon. Didn't know yet. They had no internal propulsion. They were just put up there into the jet stream to drift across the Pacific Ocean, and then the idea was they would fall to Earth in North America, and they would ignite forest fires on such a scale that it would divert the Americans from fighting the Pacific War because they'd have to deal with all these forest fires. Now, it seems like kind of a wacky scheme, but let me just conjure this scene for you, and I'm going to take a little poetic or historian's license. I can't prove this happened, but I think it's a plausible, therefore a reasonable bit of historical speculation that illustrates the point. At about these balloons were launched from about September 1944 until about February or March 1945, when the Japanese ran out of helium supplies and just couldn't do it anymore. But in that 5-6 month period, they launched about 10,000 of these. That coincides almost precisely with the systematic firebombing campaign against the Japanese home islands, which began in November of 1944 and continues through August 1945. Every night from these air bases, the Mariana Islands, Saipan, where you saw the suicides last night, every night, these bomber streams, so-called B-29 bombers, were flying to the Japanese home islands, streams of 5, 6, 7, 800 bombers, B-29 4-engine bombers, flying to Japan, dropping these bomb loads in scientifically determined patterns, hoping to ignite firestorms. The world's first firestorm was in Hamburg, Germany, 1943. A firestorm is a fire so intense and large that it kills people not through burning but through suffocation as it sucks oxygen out of the atmosphere around its periphery. They succeeded once in Tokyo, March 9th, 10th, 1945. That night, we created a firestorm in Tokyo that killed about 100,000 Japanese